Good afternoon, and welcome to my presentation on my vision of the future of education by Alex Ludford. This has been made as part of the Current Trends course with Dr. Yiping Lau. Good afternoon, and welcome to my presentation on my vision of the future of education by Alex Ludford. This has been made as part of the EME 6939 Current Trends in Education course by Dr. Yiping Lau. First, I'd like to share with you my inspiration for my project. This project has been made inspired by a quote by Winston Churchill, in which he said, "The farther backward one can see, the farther forward one can look." I've taken this as and really ingrained that into my vision of the future of education by taking a look backward at the gap in the technology between 8 years prior to now and applied that to what my vision of technology 8 years to the future will be. So first I need to take a look backwards. So I figure that if this assignment is to take a look at education in the year 2020, then the amount of time from now until 2020 is 8 years. So if we're supposed to be looking 8 years into the future, and I am of the personal philosophy that I need to take a look backward before I can see into the future, then I should take a look back that same amount of time, that same 8 years, which puts me at 2004. This is fortuitous because 2004 happened to be my senior year of high school, and the next year, 2005, was really my first brush with instructional technology as a freshman in college. So I'm going to take a look at that gap between my senior year of high school / my freshman year of undergraduate and now, and try to apply the same progression in technology to where we stand now in terms of instructional technology and where we will be in 8 years. I call this loosely reverse engineering. So let's take a look at what instructional technology was like 8 years ago for me. If you take a look at these pictures, I'm the one that the arrow is pointing to. There's not a lot of instructional technology happen. In each one I'm using paper and pencil. There do happen to be, there's a projector screen there, but that was for an overhead projector. There are televisions mounted on the wall and one on the cart, but that was mostly used to show us VHS tapes every so often and to use for the morning announcements. And there are calculators there, but that was only used in my math class and for mathematical purposes, none of which were really outside of the norm. So there was not a lot of instructional technology being used in high school. I remember using it for word processing in the library. I remember using it for internet research my senior year for my advanced placement course, and I even made one PowerPoint presentation for my environmental science course that I took as a senior. Even then, there was no direct instruction on how to use PowerPoint from my teacher. I merely did it for extra credit. So I decided to see what the gap was between that 8 years ago and 8 years prior to that, when I was in 4th grade. And really the technology had not changed very much. There were still televisions being used for closed caption morning announcements. Overhead projectors were being used 16 years ago. Wow, 16 years ago. Calculators were being used. I mean, we're not going as far back as the abacus here, but yeah, there really had not been a very big progression between 16 years ago and 8 years ago, save for the fact that I was using internet to do research. I was using the computer for word processing, but that was only because I happened to have one at home and my mother was a computer programmer 16 years ago. So not a huge gap. So I wanted to take a look at roughly what instructional technology was like immediately prior or immediately after 8 years ago. So these instructional technologies were around when I was a senior. I was just not engaged in using them. perhaps because I didn't have that innovative of teachers, or I had decent teachers, but they just weren't too interested in using technology. My first laptop I was given when I attended St. Leo University, and it was an IBM ThinkPad R52. It had the capability. It had all of the Microsoft Office programs on it, and we used it to create our own PowerPoint presentations in nearly every class. Used it for internet research, and my freshman year, actually even in the first semester, I created a video commercial for the ancient Greek politician Solon. So almost right off the bat, I was using a lot more instructional technology than I had been in high school, and even my instructors were using PowerPoints every so often to deliver the instruction. So in high school 8 years ago, it wasn't that the technologies weren't around, it's just that they weren't engaged in using them. So it was very good that I took a look at how they were being used, even if it was a few months after the 8-year mark. So there is a huge gap between what was going on 8 years ago and what's going on now. In my high school classroom, I've managed to integrate a lot of different technologies. We have here on the screen some pictures from the project that I'm going to show you here in a minute. And the students are using iPads, they're using iPhones, they're using iPods, they're using MacBooks. I happen to have a MacBook Pro while they had the regular MacBook. I brought in my Canon Rebel T2i, a digital SLR camera. There's an LCD projector that I used as part of the lesson, and even the technology that I have at home for my own use here as a USF student. I have a much nicer than an IBM ThinkPad computer desktop, very large screen for playing video games every so often, and I have all sorts of new technologies and devices that I try to integrate on a near daily basis into my instruction. So a big gap between 8 years ago, or 16 years ago and 8 years ago. There was very little gap, but there's been a huge explosion in technology between 8 years ago and now. So, my vision of the future of technology, the progression of this of instructional technology over the next 8 years, is boiled down into a few main points. First, I believe that they will be driven by new technological innovations that are coming down the road. Not necessarily new inventions, but innovations upon the products that we already have. And I also believe that project-based approach in 21st century skills are really going to become the defining elements of pedagogy for teachers. And I think that pedagogy is going to spread to the virtual education programs that we have. And we're going to see a blending of the two, of the traditional classroom and a virtual education, to the point at which there's an equilibrium between them. The classroom is going to become more of a physical host for the digital world. And I think that the best way to show you this is an example of a project that I'm doing now, and I can describe to you how I think that in 8 years it could be more effectively handled, I guess.